Hello everyone and welcome to the English Hour. Today we'll talk about failure. Failure is not a particularly enjoyable topic to talk about, but I think it's an important topic because there is a lot that we can learn from failure. And I think recently I've had several experiences where I thought about failure a lot. And it's that feeling and that experience that has brought me to this point. So, Janberg, what do you think about the topic of failure? Is it an attractive one?
Well, hi guys. I think it's an important one.
It's not very attractive.
Yeah. It's just like life and death in a sense. Like people love talking about how to live, what to do, what to eat, where to go. It's fun, but sometimes you have to have the other conversation as well,
That's true. I mean, failure is a difficult conversation because, and I think human beings, we have a tendency to sort of avoid or overlook difficult conversations. We try to sort of skip difficult conversations until the very end. And honestly, when you skip the difficult conversations until the very end, they kind of explode in your face.
Yeah, it's difficult. I think we have like a built-in strategy to maximize pleasure and minimize pain as much as possible.
That's true.
And, talking about failure is painful. I mean, having failure, first of all, is painful. And then talking about it means reliving the experience in a sense.
That's true.
And that's really not fun.
Yeah, when you're trying to dissect the root causes of your failure, you have to experience it again in great detail. Yeah. And as you said, if that was a painful experience, you don't really want to go through it again. But, well, as grown-ups, as adults, or as people growing up, because, growing up is a continuous process. It's not like a benchmark that you hit. It's a continuous process, and we're all growing up. We're all trying to mature every day.
Definitely.
Bit by bit.
Yeah. And I think making failure, first of all, a painless experience to a certain degree is a good idea. Because if you have this huge feeling of pain each time you fail at something, I don't think you can really sustain your well-being. It would be very difficult. You have to have a more mature mindset about failure, even at the moment of failure, which is the most difficult. And if you can kind of mitigate that feeling of pain during failure, experienced during failure, then you can also start to lower the amount of pain while talking about failure. Because if failure itself is not too painful, then talking about it will also not be very painful. And then that kind of opens a window in front of you, and you can use that window of opportunity to really, as you said, to really dissect what happened. You can actually have a more rational approach to it. And I think at that point, you really start to learn.
That is true. And as I said, I've been thinking about success and failure a lot recently.
Yeah.
And I feel that my hair and beard is kind of turning white at certain areas.
You don't show it, by the way.
Yeah,
for our listeners.
Yeah,
you don't show it.
It's not like vast regions of my hair. No. Maybe bits and pieces here and there. But the thing is, I think pain is somehow needed to grow.
Yeah.
Because when you're trying to grow, there is always some sort of growth pain.
Yeah.
When you're trying to learn something, there's always some pain in the process of learning. Because learning and growing means to push your barriers, push your boundaries, because you are limited by your existing knowledge, by your existing capabilities and stuff. So they literally form a boundary around you, and you have to break them. And it's not easy to break through those barriers. So growing up definitely requires the experience of pain to some degree. So pain is not necessarily bad.
No, it's not bad.
But if you're torturing yourself, that is definitely bad. But if you're trying to build something useful, you're going to experience failure. For example, we're trying to create materials for our students, and I believe sometimes the process is quite painful, right?
Yeah.
Like you're working for hours and sometimes what comes out is not that great. You have to work on it. You have to revise it again. There's something missing and it can be painful.
Yeah, sometimes.
Sure. But then in the end, what you get is worth it.
I believe so.
Yeah, when you see people like utilizing that material, when you see people benefiting from that, when you see people like transforming their lives through the use of those materials, then it can be very valuable. But the process of creating something or the process of building something can be painful.
You know, actually, this point that you made about how failure can be a useful thing really brings up an important point about coping with failure.
Sure.
When you contextualize your failure, when you contextualize your pain, I think it really helps you to deal with it more effectively.
Sure.
Because you understand that I did it for a reason and this was just a side effect of the process. You know, it comes with the territory, it comes with the process, so
Sure.
you have to suffer through it, power through it, in another saying. It reminds me of this famous Haruki Murakami aphorism, right? From the book What I Talk About When I Talk About Running. He says, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional.
That's true. And it's a
Right.
it's a beautiful quote.
It's like when I think about suffering, I think the main difference between pain and suffering is the psychological perspective that you have.
Sure.
And pain, I mean, both feel bad, no doubt about that. And both can be destructive if you allow them to have an effect on you for prolonged periods of time. But the difference, I think, is pain is simple, you know?
Sure. It's more like physical.
Yeah, it's basic, it's raw. It's there, you know, if you burn your hand,
yeah.
it's gonna be painful. But suffering, it's very compounded. You know, it's not just pain. It's like meaningless pain or senseless pain or cruel pain. Like something adds to the experience and makes it more aggravated, makes it more difficult to handle, especially psychologically.
It's more intricate.
It's more intricate in a sense. Yeah, it's more nuanced. So when you talk about these things, it's like going back to coping with failure. I think if you choose the painful route, but the meaningful route, then you can minimize suffering.
Sure.
And to do that is, as you said, like I am experiencing a lot of failure. Sometimes things don't work out, but I have a goal and I'm motivated to achieve that goal. And I know that it's going to bring benefit to people's lives, to bring value to people's lives. When you have that mindset, then your pain and your failure are contextualized. You contain them. You put them in almost like a box.
Sure.
And they don't go out, they don't leak out, and then they don't touch other parts of your life or your mindset.
But it's very difficult to contain those.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of mental strength.
Definitely.
Well, I think there are basically 3 ways to respond to failure. One is overreacting. The other is underreacting. And I think the middle ground is sort of the logical, responsible response to pain. For example, if you're overreacting, like you sort of make the failure look like a real mess.
You
So-
kind of blow it out of proportion.
That is true. Like you overreact to it. Like you act as if it was the end of the world. You know, there are people like that.
Yeah.
And sometimes maybe we're doing that. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm doing it. I'm not sure. But
I totally did that in the past a lot.
yeah,
but
it's
like I'm
overreacting.
learning. Yeah.
But you're learning through the process.
Yeah.
So there are times when we overreact to failure. And there are times when we underreact to failure. Because, well, overreacting is bad, but underreacting is, I think, equally bad. Because, for example, well, if there's a failure and if it matters to your life, then you should take the necessary precautions. You should make the necessary adjustments so that the failure does not happen again. Because it might have detrimental impacts on your life or on your career, whatever. So if you're trying to like sweep it under the carpet, if you're trying to sort of overlook that failure and sort of ignore it by underreacting, that's, I think, equally bad and harmful. Yeah. So you should not... worse. It could be even worse. Like, because when you overreact, the chances are that you'll take some measures.
Exactly. That's the difference, right?
Yeah.
If you underreact, then you might actually feel like you're not supposed to, or you don't need to adequately respond to change whatever the failure is damaging. Like, because failure causes damage, and you have to deal with that damage as well as deal with the failure or having failed in the first place. So if you, as you said, if you underreact, if you don't take responsibility, then things might actually get messier.
That's true. And then this brings me to the middle ground, like a more responsible approach to failure, which means basically embracing your emotions. Mm-hmm. It's okay to feel sad and disappointed because, well, there is some failure in front of you. But then you should also acknowledge your irrational beliefs and fears about failure, because as I said, in the case of overreacting, you think that it's kind of the end of the world. It's not. So when you are being responsible, like you embrace your emotions, you feel sad, you feel frustrated, that's okay. You embrace your emotions, but you also logically know that it's not hopefully the end of the world, and you can make up for it. You can make things better the next time, or you can improve your grade or score the next time. And then you should take responsibility for your actions. So if you were the person like performing a certain task or duty, and if there was failure at the end of that process, then you should definitely bear some responsibility because it's yours to take.
You should take action.
And then when you take responsibility, when you embrace your emotions, when you're aware of your irrational beliefs and fears, then you can make a conscious effort to improve yourself. And in this case, failure can be helpful.
Definitely. And you can have some closure. Like, you failed, and you, like, failing successfully is sometimes more important than succeeding itself. Like, because you can definitely fail successfully. Because if you dealt with your failure in a meaningful manner, if you dealt with the fear of failure at the same time, if you learned from the experience, and then if you also took the necessary precautions to, first of all, address the problem at hand, and looking towards the future, take the necessary measures to not repeat the failure itself, then you have gained a lot more, like exponentially more than just a mere success in that experience. Sometimes can be like a bliss, in that sense.
Well, Bill Gates says that success is a lousy teacher. And you can really learn from your failures. And I think there is a saying that goes like this: if you don't fail, you don't learn. If you have not ever failed, then you haven't ever learned. Because like learning requires failure. For example, there is this example that I really like. It goes like this.
I have another one after that.
Yeah. Well, I was listening to a conversation about success and failure and how important it is to keep going, basically. It was like, well, unfortunately, as we grow up, our society imposes some standards on us, like the perfection, not failing, and so on. But if when we were babies, we gave up walking after a few tries, we would be basically reptiles crouching down the floor. So like, if you're a baby, you fail countless times. Like, you fall down, you cry, you hurt yourself, but you keep pushing, you keep trying. Because if you didn't do that, you'd be basically on the floor, like crouching throughout your life. And that would not be...
That would be terrible.
Yeah, that wouldn't be useful to anyone.
That would be such a huge blow to our, maturity, our evolution as a human being, right?
That's true. So we definitely need resilience. And we definitely need some form of failure to succeed. And I think in the world of startups, the rate of failure is associated with the success of a company. For example, if you can fail successfully very quickly, then that means you have a first mover advantage. Because like, for example, you're developing a new product, one version sucks, the other version sucks, but if you learn through the process, if you learn how to improve the product, if you build something better, like to gain a competitive advantage over your competitors, then that process of failing can be a blessing. So the rate of failing, but doing it in a contained manner, because like if you fail and if your whole company collapses, then it's not very helpful. But if you fail in a contained manner, like if you fail and learn and then adapt or adjust your processes, then it can be very helpful. Very, very helpful, yeah. Well, I like that example. I'm going to kind of bring it closer to home and talk about our English teaching processes, for example. I got a lovely comment from one of our students the other day. And the reason why I think it's lovely is because it reflects the mindset of the person, like what they're thinking about. Yeah. So this person is from Boğaziçi University, which we are graduates of. And this is one of the finest universities in Turkey. So this person, this student, is preparing for the prep school. I think they're either in prep school or entering the exam to skip prep school. So the English prep school, that's what I mean for our audience. So he has been sending us a number of essays to proofread and to correct the mistakes and show where the mistakes are so that he can benefit from it and he can learn and he can get better. So he's been doing a good job like developing, but he started very low. So it's really difficult for him, like he's struggling. Sure. And one of the latest, I think like 5th or 6th essay, he sends a good one. Like he sends an essay that's going to pass in the exam. So it's like 65, something like this, 65 out of 100, because you need 60 to pass the exam, 56, 60, something like that. So he shoots us an email saying, and by the way, at the end of the essay, I say, like I wrote a comment and I said, this is a very good one. This is like appropriate level. This is very good. It's going to pass in the exam. And he says, why is my score so low? Like 65 is such a low score. Can you please tell me what I can do to get 70, 80, 90? Like what differentiates my essay from the ones that get higher scores? Yeah. And I smiled. I really liked it because I totally understand where this person is coming from. This person is one of the highest scorers in the university entrance exam, because you have to score really high. You have to be in the like 1% percentile to get into Boğaziçi University. So this person it can be like appropriately defined as a high achiever, right? Yeah. He's used to getting like 80s, 90s, 100s from all the exams, right? And then he comes here and then he has this like awesome essay that he puts all of his effort and time and focus into, and all he gets is a meager 65 out of 100. And then he also gets a pat on the back for getting 65. It's almost like demeaning. It's so patronizing. And then he says like, what's going on here? Like, where's my 90? Where's my 95? And then I tell him like the number of students who can get like who were able to get 80 or higher in the prep school department over the last 2 years, it's just a handful of people. Sure. Nothing more than like 3 to 4. So you have to have a lot of like experience and skill to be able to get to that point. But what you did is enough. And this exam that you're preparing for is not something that you need to get 100 or a 90 out of. Sure. You just need to pass. Well, I think we can definitely record an episode on how to improve your writing skills and what matters in grading and so on. So I think that would be a good point to really talk about. Yeah. Maybe we should note this down, and in another episode we can talk about our grading process and the common problems students face and how we go about advising them and what matters in improving their scores, because I have a 3-step process that we've been implementing with students, and that really helps. So that's great. We should definitely note this down and talk about this in another episode. But the psychological aspect of this is so like it's almost like so endearing, because I feel for this person. Yeah. This is a humbling experience for him. It is. So It is.
And he's trying to learn, he's learning. So.
But then with that mindset, I think that person is going to really improve, because maybe this year he's going to get 65 or 70, but like he'll probably take the English classes throughout the undergrad years, and when he finally graduates, then I think he'll have a much better English when it comes to writing.
Sure. But it's really important that he deals with failure. He has to learn how to deal with getting 70 out of 100.
The thing is, I think a lot of BUZZ students have a very humbling experience when they take the proficiency test at the end of the year, because a lot of students fail to their surprise and to their family's surprise.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's a very humbling experience. I mean, it's very disheartening, it's very frustrating, but it's a real experience. And then, it kind of puts things in perspective somehow.
Yeah, and also they have to learn how to deal with it, because throughout their undergraduate years, maybe even later down the road, they're going to get these grades, man. Because all of the other guys have also scored incredibly high at the university entrance exam.
Yeah.
The competition is so much higher now.
That is true.
So they're going to get these grades. And, sometimes you can even get like 55. And because of the curve, because of the grading system,
you might fail.
You might fail, but in other case, like if everybody else got 40, 45, 35, then with 55 out of 100, you can get an A, right?
You're top of the pack.
Definitely. So you have to learn how to deal with it, right?
That's true.
So failure is such a important teacher, right?
It certainly is. And I think there are some quotes that I really like regarding failure, and I'd like to share those with their audience. And the first one is from Edison, who tried to find a light bulb, I think, by trying out like thousands of combination of materials, and in the end he got what he wanted, and he said, I simply found 10,000 ways that won't work.
Yeah,
that's an incredible approach.
Yeah, it is.
It's very difficult to find something who tries something for 10,000 times until he gets what he wants.
Yeah,
that's very I think incredible.
Yeah.
And the other one is by Henry Ford, and he says, failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently. I really like this, because failure is, if you want it, it can be a great teacher, because when you fail and when you dissect your failure, you understand what caused that failure, and you can improve the parts that caused the failure, and the next time you can move more intelligently and do better.
Yeah, and there can definitely be success in failure and failure in success. Just to bring it full circle, because we talked about it earlier in the episode.
That's true.
Mike Tyson, for example. I'm like reaching out for a different example. Mike Tyson became the undisputed heavyweight of the champion in boxing at the tender age of 19. To have that much pressure and so much attention placed upon you at the age of 19 is insane. It's incredible. Even like boxers who have been in the game for maybe a decade or longer can't even deal with that kind of psychological pressure. It's so difficult. And this guy just came in, and he has been poor throughout his life. Like no money, no opportunities, comes in, destroys his opponent, and becomes the champion. And he's got everything like poured on top of him. And like it becomes a cultural phenomenon too. Like past heavyweight boxing champions were not, with the exception of several like very high profile cases like Muhammad Ali, like they weren't very like culturally important. It's important for boxing fans, but this is important for everybody. Everybody becomes like boxing fans all of a sudden, and he can't deal with it, and he becomes this very volatile and sometimes very aggressive person because of this, and he fails so many times. So he has experienced a lot of failure in his success or because of his success. So you can definitely succeed failingly in a failing manner, and you can fail successfully. So This is important. You have to like check yourself. You have to keep keep at it and keep learning.
I think it's important to put things in perspective.
Yeah.
So it's important to learn from each and every experience. So success, if you analyze your success and if you learn what helped you get there, it can help you repeat that success. But when people become successful, generally the tendency is to sort of give up or abandon the beliefs, the rituals that got them there, and eventually that leads to failure. And then if they're smart, they sort of analyze their situation and find a way out. They start practicing their old habits again, and then they reach a certain level of success again. But success can be a great teacher or a lousy teacher, as Bill Gates puts it. And failure can be a great teacher or a lousy teacher, because if you overreact, if you don't learn from your failure, and if you sort of take a very destiny-based view, like this is my fate, like I failed, I'm gonna fail again, failure is my sort of destiny, then it's not gonna really help you, because as a human being, you have the potential to change certain things, certain parameters in your life. For example, maybe you can't change the car you're driving, but you can definitely change gears, you can definitely take turns, you can do something.
Yeah, and you might actually achieve the financial success that will give you another car. That's you can also get another car.
Yeah, that's true. So failure is not, like in the American term, failure is not really sexy, but it's definitely something we should think about.
Yeah.
And pain and failure can be great teachers if you learn from them.
Yeah.
Well, that's basically my take on this issue, and well, we'll be happy if you can share yours in the comments.
Yeah, sure. In wrapping up, just a few sentences. You talked about how to cope with failure, and you gave us a few factors to consider or a few strategies. And I think they were, first of all, acknowledging your emotions, embracing your emotions. That was one. And then you also had finding and confronting fear of failure, and also having irrational beliefs about failure. Just as you mentioned just right now, you said, I failed and I keep failing, so I'm going to fail for the rest of my life. This is an irrational belief. It's not grounded in reality. Nobody fails forever. It's not possible for a human being to fail forever. So you definitely need to understand that, and you need to change that irrational belief and replace it with a rational belief, which is, if I work hard, if I do what is necessary to succeed, I am going to succeed. And this is a rational belief. So, and it doesn't depend on your circumstances. It depends on your approach. It depends on what you do. So it's empowering also. And I think we need to add a third one, which is really good. So I wanted to mention that. That's the reason why I repeated the first two. And I think it's important to remember too. The third one is taking on responsibility for failure, but in an appropriate manner. Just as you can overreact and underreact, you can also, in terms of responsibility, you can also kind of take on too much or too little. If you take on too much responsibility, that means you blame yourself for everything that happened, everything negative. And that's not true. Whenever you fail, there are multiple factors. Some of them belong to you or concern you, and some of them are completely unrelated. And you have to acknowledge that.
Sure.
Because you're a human being, you have limits, and you also should have limits in terms of responsibility. But at the same time, if you take on too little, that's another problem. That means you don't care, you're indifferent. You are doing something, you are having an effect on the world, but you don't understand, you don't recognize the effect that you're having.
I think you should push your limits.
Yeah.
Basically, if you're failing, failure is a part of life, but not pushing your limits, then that means you're not really tackling your failure. Yeah, I mean, if you have the potential, if you have the resources, if you have the time, you should make your best to avoid failure. But if you fail, regardless, then you just take lessons and move on.
Yeah.
It's life.
An excellent summary, yeah.
Yeah. Well, guys, we'll see you in the next episode, and bye for now.
Bye bye.